Alright, so I'm back again with another Audio Effects Ableton video. Part 1 and 2 I'll link down below. And if you're into music production, you want to improve your skills, this is the channel for you. So please feel free to subscribe. And let's jump straight into it with the EQ8. The EQ8 is a great way to get rid of unwanted frequencies. So there's a range of filters you can use to do this. So firstly, you've got a low cut. You can get rid of the lower frequencies you don't need. And you've also got a high pass as well. If you notice with the low cut, it is a bit steeper than the high pass. We've also got a bell filter. This is a good way of identifying frequencies across the spectrum you don't want, and then you can remove them. We've also got a notch filter, which basically creates a hole and removes the frequencies around it. I think it's a bit extreme, but it can be useful in certain circumstances. We've also got a high shelf as well, so if you want to add some glisten in your high end, this is good at boosting the frequencies there. And we've also got a low pass and a high cut. And similar to the low cut that you saw earlier, the high cut has a steeper curve. If you're playing around with the bell filter, you can make it narrower by playing with the Q control on the left there. And what that'll do is that'll help you focus on the frequencies that need to be removed. By moving across, I can identify the frequencies I don't want, reduce the gain of them, take them out. So if you're trying to remove unwanted frequencies, the headphone button can help you focus on those specific ones. So that's particularly good to use. So the EQ8 starts off in stereo, but if you want to EQ certain frequencies in the left and right ear, you can switch modes, and you can also do the same with the mids and the sides. And you'll see just below that you've got the Adapt Q button, and if this is enabled, when you move a filter, it'll get narrower the more you move it. Again, if you're trying to remove harsh frequencies, it's particularly useful to have. Alright, next up you've got the scale. This scales the amount of gain change applied to all the active filters, and just to let you know that it doesn't affect the low cut or the high cut. And then finally you've got the gain. If you've got some volume through EQing, you can increase the gain to make up for that. So next up we've got the EQ3, which is a good little alternative to the EQ8. So at the top there you've got the gain controls for the lows, mids and the highs. So at the bottom you've got the low frequency control and the high frequency control. So whatever that number is on the low frequency, anything below that will be EQ'd in the lows, and with the high frequency, anything above that number will be in the highs, and in the mids will be anything between those numbers you've chosen for the lows and the highs. And then you'll see at the bottom you've got the 24 and the 48. If you choose the 48, this will result in more drastic filtering. Alright, moving on to the auto filter. A little bit similar to the EQ8 in a few ways, however there are some different things here. You can really emphasise the cutoff by using the resonance, for example. I quite like using this when I'm filtering out drums. As well as the low pass, you've also got a high pass, and you've also got a mixture of the two, which is the band pass, which does sound particularly good. Similar to the EQ8, you've also got a notch filter, which cuts a hole and removes the frequencies around it. And the other filter there is the morph filter. So this is a combination of all the ones you've just seen previously. Play around with the morph control. You can create some cool filtering. Again, play with it and see what works best for you. And then the 12 and 24, which you see just below it, determines how steep the cutoffs are. So in this drop down here, you can add different types of distortion. Just for example, this MF2. And then drive control will appear at the bottom, and you can add some distortion to your filtering. And on the left there, you can see the envelope. This opens up the filter with more volume, and then below it you've got the attack and release. So this is how fast it happens and how fast the filter finishes. For some added effects, you can also add an LFO, which creates a bit of a wobble to your filter, and then you can increase the rate if you want this to be a bit faster. You can also sync it to the BPM by pressing the note head button, and you can also offset the left and right channels by bringing the phase up to 180. And you can see at the bottom here that you can quantize. So I've turned up the LFO and the rate so you can hear this, but you can sync it to the tempo of the track. By this example, I've got it on 4 beats, so you can hear the filter working every 4 beats. Alternatively, you could add movement to a sound using the LFO audio effect. So for this example, I'm mapping it to the auto filter, and I've mapped it to the frequency and then increased the rate over time, so it builds some nice tension with this riser. You can hear with the movement here that it's quite erratic, so by playing with these percentages, it can decrease the movement of the LFO. which ultimately makes it sound a lot smoother. You can press the note head button and you can play around with the rate so it moves on a particular beat. And you can play around with the offset, which shifts it from the center point of the LFO. And there's some other cool little effects here. You can add some jitter, makes it sound a bit more random and a bit more erratic. If for any reason you've added jitter and it is slightly too erratic, you can increase the smooth, which does what it says, smooths it out. So if you want to make audio effects go a bit further, you can add an audio effect rack. You can add audio effects to each of these chains, which you can add by right-clicking and creating a chain. Just for this example here, I've got two chains. One of them's got a delay on. It's only about 10 milliseconds or so, but because I'm panning them in either ear, it creates a slight delay, causing the sound to become a bit wider. So if there's particular controls within the audio effects which you want to play with, you can add them into your macros. And if you've got multiple audio effects within one rack, it can be a much easier way of creating automation and also playing around with these macros to create different effects. Also, Ableton has a pretty useful spectrum analyzer, so you can check the frequencies for certain sounds, or you can put it on the master channel just to see if your song covers the whole frequency spectrum. The higher the number at the top here, the more samples that the spectrum analyzer analyzes. You can also analyze frequencies in the left and right ear, or just the left or just the right. The refresh is how often the spectrum analyzer refreshes itself. So with the average, the lower the number, the more often the display will update, and the higher it is, the less often, but you can measure the peaks over time. You can play around with the graph and play with its visuals, and you can see the max frequencies at the top, but you can also take these out as well. And then you can also play around with the scales at the bottom there, choose what works for you and what you want to see your scales go up to. Alright, so that's it for this video. If you found it useful, please drop us a like and a subscribe, would really mean a lot, and I'll be back very soon for another video. Peace.